morning again. My name is Caroline Smith. I am the programmer for schools and teachers at the National Gallery in London. And I'm going to talk this morning about the creation of our network for those students who have special educational needs and disabilities, which is a relatively recent venture for us. So we are, as many of you will know, a collection of Western European painting from around 1250 to 1900. And we welcome all sorts of educational groups. Our emphasis is really on encouraging students to discover artwork for themselves. And our biggest audience is probably schools, ranging from children who might be under 5, maybe preschool, all the way through to higher education students. And the emphasis, as I said, is on questioning. So we often use a 3-stage approach in opening up painting for any of our students. And that is to encourage them to look, to then think about what they've seen, and then to imagine. Think about what those discoveries might mean for them, but also for their wider existence, both in their school and in their community. So our network for SEND grew out of the National Gallery's general work and what we felt we needed to do. And this really was brought home to us at an exhibition of children's work, which we put on every year. And we invite those people who have submitted to come and visit. And this particular year, the exhibition included work from a special school in the UK. And they were very keen to come and visit us. And we were very keen to have them. But the practical difficulties in doing that were considerable and really made us realise that we were shockingly equipped to help those visitors. And that included just the general awareness of staff, but also the practical restrictions of the building, the fact that we didn't have the right level of support. We hadn't considered that some children might need a hoist. We hadn't considered the nature of changing spaces, the need for quiet rooms. I have to say this is now a while ago, but not that long ago. And we felt that we had to be much, much better informed. So that was the background to the network. And the experience that we'd had with that exhibition prompted a whole review of our provision. And we recognised that we did not have the expertise in-house to be able to do that. So we started with a research and development phase where we consulted teachers to begin with, teachers and carers, those people who worked with those students every day, and also other practitioners who might be able to enlighten us about best practice. We also worked with our own team, including not just the education staff, but also our in-house services like buildings, security staff, all of those things that go into actually making a really successful visit. And we worked with individual schools. We got to know their teachers. We got to know their students. We discussed their needs. We piloted activities. And then we were looking to very much improve the sort of sessions that we could offer for those students. We were, it's amazing, it's a lovely photo. We were very lucky to have funding. None of this comes cheap. But because of that, we were able to develop 2 new sessions. One for children with profound and multiple learning disabilities, which we called Sense It, and a second for those with moderate difficulties, Explore It. And those 2 images there come from those sessions. Children exploring the gallery, exploring the artworks, but in a way that will be relevant to them and will allow them to access what we want them to be able to access. And the development of these 2 sessions didn't just include the educational content. It also included the development of a checklist for the practicalities of such a visit and the information that teachers needed before they could make that visit. So we included things like photographs that they could show children of what the building looked like, and also who they would meet. They could see photographs of the people that they would, who would be taking their sessions, to provide as much information as we could before the visit. And having gone through that process, we learned a lot. But we also recognised that there were ongoing challenges. There were questions that we would have in the future. And we also realised that lots of other people out there were asking the same questions that we were asking. And we realised that there was an awful lot of good practice out there, if only we could join it all together. It's also a very challenging process to continually develop your programme, to keep up to date with developments. There's a cost involved for specialist practitioners, for equipment, etc. And we realised that that's difficult to do, whoever you are, but that's much more difficult if you're a smaller organisation. You might not have a dedicated education staff. You may not have dedicated access staff. You may not have those resources that are available to larger institutions. And you also might have staff, whoever you are, who are suddenly in a new role and have to take this on, maybe not having had previous experience. So the idea was to create a network, to provide peer support, to share ideas and expertise. And we partnered initially with the Museum of London because they also had a very established programme for children with special needs. And they are also a different type of collection. So we're a collection solely of painting. They are a collection mainly of objects exactly things relating to the history of London. So potentially we thought that working together we could cover more. And we wanted the network very much to respond to the needs of its members, that it should be a genuine collaboration. So we asked anybody who joined initially to start with an audit, who they work with currently, and what range of needs do those current visitors have. Who would they like to work with in the future? What would they like to get out of the network? What did they feel they would need in the future in order to be able to cater for that wider range of visitors? And what we found was that people were very ambitious. They really wanted to provide these services. They weren't reluctant at all, but they were often challenged. So the network then should be a platform for sharing best practice and also for sharing skills and experience. We wanted to promote the necessity of embedding SEND provision within the public offer of all cultural institutions, that it wasn't seen as an add-on, it was seen as something fundamental to what they did, and also to contribute to the public debate around those services. The network also provides a means of training, and we have now a wide range of members, some international. Probably the furthest afield is the Tower of David Museum in Jerusalem. So they do come from quite a range. The emphasis is on a cooperative ethos. The National Gallery in London and the Museum of London facilitate the network, but quarterly meetings are held at different venues, and these venues might share or ask for ideas on some of their own practice. They might present a case study. It's also a way of visiting different venues and seeing what they have on offer, and also for celebrating successes, stealing good ideas, and also for sharing challenges. We have a wide range of members from different sorts of collection, and they face different challenges, which it's helpful for all of us to discuss. So, for example, our colleagues at the Learning Service at the Houses of Parliament face real issues in terms of the fact that it's a historic building, but also increasingly because of the levels of security. They're very keen to widen their provision for special educational needs, but they do have very particular challenges. We also have, as part of our network, Camden Arts Centre, who are doing really pioneering work in terms of working with artists with disabilities. A really vital area. This was brought home to us when we were taking round a little girl who said, "Oh, I'm going to get better when I get older. I will grow out of my disability." And the reason that she said that was she said she had never seen adults with those disabilities. She'd never worked with those teachers or those artists. And therefore to her, oh, well, this must be something that will go. So they're doing really pioneering work in terms of working with a range of artists. We use our own contacts to keep the network up to date, and particularly where we are involved in either national or London-wide initiatives. We take a CPD approach. So in addition to formal training, or rather informal training at quarterly meetings, we provide 2 training sessions per year. And the intention is that one of those training sessions will be aimed at early career professionals and one at developing the provision within the organisation. We also invite experts. We've recently done some work with the National Autistic Society, who have come and advised on what is best practice. And those meetings also investigate ways in which we can translate those suggestions to our own very different venues. And we also recognise that it's very important to have time for discussion. And I think teachers, museum staff, we're all rushing, we're all trying to do too many things at once. it's great to reflect. We know it's great to reflect, but finding the time to do that is very hard. So a key part of these meetings is to facilitate that. Since the development of the network, things have changed. The landscape of provision has changed. It has improved, but it's still patchy. Our experience of the last few years suggests that the main participants to our network are largely museum and gallery professionals. Where we have teachers, we're working with them very much as experts and consultants. They are the ones who are the expert in this provision. And the network enables them, on the other side, to find out what we can offer to their students. And from them, we can learn what is needed and also what's the best way of being able to provide that. It's proved valuable when we've worked with expert practitioners. The slide that you have there shows an interactive storytelling session, which was fantastic. And we also feel that teachers are better able to question those practitioners and make sure that what they're doing really meets, again, the needs of their students and meets current educational theory about what is best practice. Because what might have been cutting edge 5 years ago may not be the case any longer. The network also recognises the difficulties of getting together, the need to keep up with developments. And so we have an annual conference once a year. We get together with as many of our network members as can make it. We tend to hold one in the National Gallery, the alternate year in the Museum of London, which is a really great way of getting people together. So I'd just like to share 2 case studies with you of how the network has worked in practice. One is from the National Gallery and one is from the Tower of David Museum in Jerusalem. And maybe look at how those ideas that the network had at the beginning have maybe come to fruition. So the first is an example from the National Gallery where we felt this was a successful school partnership that we could then share with the network, talk about with the network, think about how it could be improved, what the challenges had been. So we were very much learning from an expert session that the network had put on. This was a sensory storytelling session. So having had that training, we decided to work with an individual school to test it out and then to report back to the network as a whole. So it was a circular approach, if you like. And we worked with Titian's Bacchus and Ariadne. And the way that it worked was to initially consult with the teachers of the school that we were working with, to look at the key areas for their students and the best ways for those individuals to discover this painting. And it was focused on a sensory storytelling session which took place in the gallery. It was fantastic. Our regular visitors were wanting to join in. So just to give you an idea of how the gallery session worked, we started by asking them, we're walking through the forest. What do we see? We see people around us. We hear birds in the trees. And this was accompanied by footsteps on grass and with bird calls. And now we're running through the forest. And what do we hear? Well, we hear flowing water, we hear waves. And this was accompanied by music from the sea, the wind, and also the texture of a flowing blue cloth. That, for some children, just feeling that movement of air was the way that they were going to access this painting. We also used sounds. From the painting, we got cymbals and tambourines, etc. But just to give you an idea of how this was opened up, in telling the story, we really concentrated only on the major parts of the story. And that was then followed up by work back in school. So this was developing work that had happened, but also focusing on 3 key areas: music, imagine sounds from the painting, using instruments, but also found objects, things like sticks that they, wood from the painting. It focused on art with colours. They practiced grinding colours, drama and movement, looking at and imagining, and texture, sand and a water spray, lots of different ways of accessing. The Tower of David Museum found that there was very little provision in Israel for family groups with children with special needs to visit. There was some formal work, but nothing really for families. And so they worked with us and also with the Royal Academy in London to put together a family session, which you can see being piloted here, which was very successful. But the reason I mention it is also because it was successful in itself, but also in terms of advocacy in Israel. They shared that with their own smaller network within Jerusalem and then wider, to demonstrate what they'd done, having learnt from the network, but also to provide that training to others. And they've now set up quite a successful project in which a lot of other museums and galleries in Israel are starting now to take that on. So, just to conclude, I think it's very important to remember that the work that we do here with our special educational needs visitors, what we've also found is that in thinking about it in that way, all audiences also benefit, that much of what we're saying crosses a range of our visitor profiles. And also that communication and conversations are vitally important. Don't reinvent the wheel, find out if somebody else is doing it, share your ideas, share the successes, but also be prepared to talk about the challenges. Thank you very much.